Hello, everyone. We just opened the Zoom room, so we're going to give it a moment. As we know, Zoom slowly lets people in. As you're entering in as listen only mode. So as long as you can hear me, you're going to be good. So I'll give it about one more minute and then we'll get started. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. We're just waiting another moment or so. If you can hear me, you're in a good spot for this webinar as you are entering in listen only mode. All right, so I'm going to get started. Hi, my name is Megan. I work here at Kiddom. I'm excited for you joining us today and appreciate you taking the time to join us for 3 implementable actions to create accessible 6-12 science instruction. Just a couple of housekeeping items before I turn it over to our presenters. Everyone has entered in listen only mode, but that doesn't mean you can't participate. In fact, we do want you to participate. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom window, there's a Q&A option. We'll be taking questions at the end and would love for you to use that option for us to answer it. There's also the chat. When you're sending a chat, if you want to make sure it's to everyone, please double check those settings. And then last thing, if you have any questions at any point, feel free to send them through and I'll take a look if you have any technical issues. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters. Thank you so much.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Dr. Whitney Green, and we are going to get started. Today, our focus is going to be around, you guys have new science standards. You guys are in an adoption year for your science. So we really want to talk about how do we ensure that we have accessible science for all students, and how you utilize that through 2 amazing curriculums that we house here at Kiddom, and the ways that you can enhance a curriculum through digital enhancements that we're going to speak about today. So let's start off with our mission here at Kiddom. At Kiddom, we believe in high quality core instructional materials. And as a former educator, administrator, I shouldn't say former, I am an educator, an administrator, we believe in equity and access for all students. So we want to ensure that all students have these high quality instructional materials and that teachers are able to spend the time internalizing material and content with that intellectual prep, and then being able to look at standards-based data to make that informed instructional decisions in the moment. So at Kiddom, we truly believe that all students deserve to have the equity and access to thrive within the classroom. So now it's introductions part. So I'm going to let my counterpart take it away and tell a little bit about herself.
Thanks, Dr. Green. Hi, everybody. I am Hannah Imoru. I am one of the senior account executives here on the Texas team at Kiddom. So I live here in the greater Houston area in Katy. I know many folks on the call are Texas proud. So if you want to drop in your Texas location into the chat, I always love to hear where people are calling in from. But former educator here as well. I taught in a few different Houston area school districts, have a master's degree in educational administration from Lamar University. And so obviously you can tell I'm very passionate about not only Texas education, but education as a whole and providing equitable educational experiences for all children, which is why I'm here. And I will pass it over to Dr. Green to introduce herself.
Awesome. And Hannah is amazing. I'm hoping you'll have an opportunity even maybe after here to get to know her, as she is a local within Texas. I am Dr. Whitney Green. It is a pleasure to be here. I recently came out of the district level here in the state of Tennessee. I have been a teacher, a curriculum coach, an administrator. I've done elementary, I've done high school. I've kind of dibble-dabbled in all of it, and I've loved every single experience. I'm now at Kiddom as their solutions architect. And what does that actually mean? That means everything curriculum implementation. It is near and dear to my heart because I know the struggles and the pain points that come with that when selecting a curriculum, the right curriculum, and then as well as how do you implement that effectively with that fidelity and integrity piece. So we want to support you here today, but we are very excited to talk to you about 2 amazing curriculums that we currently house here at Kiddom, and how can we ensure that all students have access to these materials and are able to thrive and meet those really rigorous and some of those new scientific concepts with your standards. All right. So as we talked about, we want to ensure, I already know when you go to a PD or PL, it's like they might give you a theme, but did they ever talk about it? Or what's the objective? And I want to stick to that objective today, and so does Hannah. We want to ensure that we talk to you about 3 takeaways for today. We really want to look at how investigations, that's going to be those hands-on experiences, those labs, those simulations, how does that lead to conceptual understanding for students? And we know that is key within our science classrooms, that we want students to have those experiences more frequently than not. We also want to ensure when we think about accessibility to curriculums that we're prescriptive and we're personalizing the learning. And again, I cannot say this enough, for all students. We know that districts have a diverse array of students that are coming to them with different needs. And so we want to make sure that we're equipping teachers to meet those needs, as well as how can we support teachers in order to do that. And then the last piece, which is one of my favorite, I always say data doesn't lie, and it doesn't. So we want to ensure that we're giving you the right data to differentiate learning. We want to make sure that you're not data rich, information poor. We want to provide you with that information for teachers to make those just-in-time scaffolded decisions, rather than having to wait till the end of a quarter when we're taking our EOCs, or right now it's testing season. And I do not envy what you're going through because I did it. But with that, we want to be able to make those instructional decisions in the moment versus having to wait till the end of a quarter or the end of a semester to realize, man, we maybe should have done some small group or mini lessons around some of those standards. So we already know you guys are in Texas. Every state is different, right? So we want to talk to you a little bit about what we're already hearing from Texas educators in the field today. So this is two things that we kind of have heard comprehensively from some of our larger districts inside of Texas. And as you can see, the first one is really talking about we need a curriculum that provides teachers the opportunity to engage all types of learners, as we have very diverse populations and needs. Labs are extremely important to the development and understanding of scientific concepts, and love the idea of virtual simulations and labs. I hope a lot of you are like cheering, thumbs up, clapping, snapping, going, yes, we feel the same way, because we're hearing this a lot within the educational field within Texas. This is something they're looking for, as you guys haven't had a science adoption in quite a long time. So this is really an exciting time for you. And then the other piece that we're also hearing is rich content is a must. The ability to personalize and adapt the content to enrich our students and ensuring we are providing on or above grade level materials is essential. I really want to highlight here the on or above grade level materials. We have to ensure that the curriculums that you're putting in the hands of your teachers are, one, standards aligned, TEKS aligned, and then two, that the materials are rigorous, that we're enriching students. And so before I move on, Hannah has been talking with a ton of educators, administrators, district levels in the state of Texas, and I kind of want her to weigh in on this a little bit. So Hannah, what are your thoughts around this?
What I love about being here in Texas is, again, Texas is such a big state, but every pocket of Texas is so different. So the Houston area is going to be different than West Texas, which is going to be different than East Texas, which is different than Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, right? So we've been hearing all different things from all different areas of what they really need. But what I love is that Kiddom is a flexible enough tool that ultimately can basically check all of the boxes for everything that districts need. So whether it is large metro districts to some of our smaller charters that we've been talking to, I think a lot of the things that we've been hearing is, again, having on or above grade level materials, the rich content, the hands-on experiences for kids, and making sure that there is equity in what we are putting out there for our students as well. Making sure that all students are going to be able to have access to these things. And then a lot of the focus also coming from TEA is the vertical alignment. And then now also talking about horizontal alignment. So making sure that the new science standards are going to be horizontally aligned to history and to ELA and to math. And Kiddom's going to be able to help you all do that. And I know Dr. Green's going to walk through that today, which is extremely exciting.
Yes. And I love how, as you hear from Hannah, myself, and what we're hearing in the field is you guys have a lot of change coming up, and we want to be able to support that change to ensure, again, that all students are going to be provided that rich instruction. Because again, every decision you make and that these districts are making is or has to be student centered. And so we really want to stay focused on being student centered today as well. So with that being said, I always like to dive into a little bit of data. And we also know that change requires the why. If you just throw something at people like, hey, we're going to do this, a lot of times people will stop you and go, well, why? Why is there change? Why did we change our science standards? Why are we now adopting a new science curriculum? These are probably common things you're starting to hear. And so as we talked about when it came to what we're already hearing in the Texas field with educators of what they're looking for, those on or above grade level materials, differentiation, meeting the needs of all students, all those pieces are so essential. But let's kind of talk about, this is some pretty alarming data that we're actually seeing across the nation. And so this first piece says that 49% of students actually are beginning the school year at least one grade level behind. That is crazy when you think about a room of 30, let's just say an average of 30 kids in a classroom, how teachers are being asked to meet the needs of all of these students with this statistic out there. And then on top of that, this one always blows me away. I always like to jump to it. It's hard to even get out because it's such a mouthful, is that a teacher would have to teach 150% of a year for 3 years in a row in order to get these students caught up. And again, there's so much, as we know, there's a teacher shortage right now as well, right? So we've got this balance going on of like, we still have to adopt a new curriculum. We still have these new standards coming. We know that because of the pandemic, there's been a lot of research done around these learning gaps that we've referred to, right? Even socially, some of those gaps we're starting to see for students, that social emotional component. But with that being said, we also know that teachers are feeling really burnt out right now because of what they went through and all the technology that was thrown on them when we had to go home and then they were teaching virtually, depending on your district and how things were handled. Teachers are feeling really burnt out with that. But how do we still keep it about kids, right? So we hear this data and it is alarming. And I know you guys know this because guess what? If you taught at all in your time in the career, you already know kids are coming to you with special needs. And so with that, what do we now know though? We've been doing the same thing for a long time. We've been purchasing high quality instruction materials, as you guys well know. It doesn't mean that what we're purchasing is right for our districts and our schools. So we have to ensure that we are always looking at what's best for our students. And that starts with your TEKS alignment. And then it goes to the rigor and the enrichment that you can provide with these curriculums.
Dr. Green, I love that you also
Yeah.
mentioned the teacher shortage as well. That's yet another thing that we've talked to. Just about every single district that we've talked to has brought that up. And so I also want to make sure that we hit on that about how we're going to be able to support new teachers, brand new to the field, and potentially some uncertified teachers who may be participating in a subject or teaching a subject that they don't have a strong enough background. And so how are those high quality instructional materials going to hopefully make their jobs a lot easier and make the school districts run more smoothly? So I know that we're going to talk about that today too.
I love that. There's a big one right now, grow your own. That's really common. I actually just read an article on a former custodian now becoming a teacher, which I think is so admirable, right? We have people who are willing to step into a totally different career just for the sake of these students, right? We have to ensure that curriculum and instruction does not stop. And so Kiddom knows this. So they know that why focusing on just the curriculum is not enough. We have to create opportunities to localize the curriculum and give teachers and administrators the opportunity to implement this curriculum in a way that works best for them within their schools and their classroom and to meet the needs of their communities. One thing I absolutely love about Texas is how community-based these districts are. I hear more and more from Texas educators when we talk about science and we talk about these students, they talk about the communities and the families that are involved. And I love that. So within Kiddom, as you can see here, these are all the components that we do with your curriculums. So we understand that as we just saw that data with high quality instructional materials, these curriculums are created in order to best serve students. But as teachers, and again, you've been in the classroom, you're probably always like, well, you know, I'm actually needing to personalize this because I need to work on these standards because this is what I'm seeing in the moment with my students. That's what one of the pieces that Kiddom offers you. You're also able to get that real-time progress data. We provide even interactive whiteboards. We know that materials are so expensive. I've seen teachers become so creative just to ensure kids have the same experience, even if they don't have the funds through the school to purchase. I see more science teachers, I think, at the general dollar store than anywhere else, because guess what? They're buying materials for their labs, which we're going to talk about today, and I'm very excited about. But I really want you just to take a minute to really think about that focusing on a curriculum is not enough. And we saw that with the data. And so when we look at these other pieces, the standards alignment, formative and summative assessments is one of the key components to really driving instruction. We've got to have in those checkpoints where Kiddom allows you to be able to do exit tickets, something as easy as an exit ticket, a warm up, and collect standards-based data in the moment, or easily be able to assign an assignment, but adjust it for 504s, IEPs, ELL, or ENL students. So again, I cannot say enough about these two amazing curriculums, OpenSide and OpenStax, which we're about to jump into, but how Kiddom enhances these curriculums. So again, we are here to talk about accessible instruction for all with our science. And before we jump into these two curriculums, I would love for Hannah to talk a little bit about when we think about meeting the needs of all students. She's a former exceptional education teacher in the classroom, of how knowing how sometimes we have to make adjustments, those accommodations, really to allow students to engage with these tasks and texts. So can you speak to that a little bit, Hannah?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that being a former special education teacher here for so long, and again, I also taught at all grade levels, did everything from kindergarten through 12th grade. I did resource, I did co-teaching model, I did, you name the special education environment, I did it. And so having a tool, and I promise, I say this all the time, and it's not a line, if I would have had a program like Kiddom, I probably wouldn't have gotten burnt out as quickly as I did being a special education teacher. There's so many opportunities in the Kiddom platform and with these high quality science curriculums that we are providing for Texas students that allow them to not only participate, but have, again, access to all of these things. So there are, and I know Dr. Green's going to walk into this, but this is where I go down my rabbit hole. But there's so many great, unique opportunities for all students to participate. So there's different variations to how we want students to respond to questions, how they're able to participate in labs, how they're able to access all of the curriculum, the assessments, the assignments, and then also be able to talk about specifically how we support special education teachers with that as well. So there's a really great opportunity with utilizing this type of a platform with high quality curriculum. And we're going to walk through that today, that you're going to be able to see whether you are a special education teacher, or whether you have exceptional education students in your classroom, or you're just a general science education teacher. You're going to be able to see how you are truly going to be able to adapt the curriculum and have it be flexible enough to support your high kids, your low kids, and every kid in between.
I love that. I love that. And I'm going to make sure to hit on that high kid component, that enrichment, because sometimes we forget about those. We don't have the resources of like those that are already mastering some of these standards. Yeah. How do we enrich? So I'm definitely wanting to hit on that,
Absolutely.
Hannah. So real quick, I just on the screen, you're seeing OpenSide, amazing curriculum. It was developed by locally UT Austin. Again, great college. They're doing great in football right now. Just throwing that out there. And so we're going to talk about all the components of how they develop this curriculum that is based on anchoring phenomena. So real life situations, and then using a storyline approach throughout, and all the resources that they provide teachers to engage students so students own the learning. And then you also have OpenStax. You might have heard of OpenStax if you got a kid in college, or you're in college currently yourself. They were founded, again, locally, Rice University. You will see that OpenStax has rich content. It is providing teachers the opportunity to, when we really say college and career ready, we're really talking about college and career ready with OpenStax. They started at the collegiate level. They've now developed a curriculum for the high school level. And again, I could not say enough about this rich content that's available at the fingertips of teachers in order to be able to equip and expose students to, like we said, that on or above grade level materials.
What I also really love about OpenStax, Dr. Green, is, again, talking about that college and career readiness. That's just another thing we've been hearing from school districts, and that it's in majority of district strategic plans for their district as a whole, is talking about what are we doing, and how well are we doing at preparing students for the next step. And so OpenStax is a great amazing curriculum that's going to be able to help support that.
Love that. So we are here today to talk about 3 strategies, right? We're not trying to throw 10 at you or 20 or not even 1. We're going to give you 3 today, and we're going to come back to these 3 throughout. So again, we're going to be talking about those investigations or simulations or labs, and we're actually going to go into the partnerships we've created to really enhance our curriculums to ensure that every child can have access to online labs and simulations. And we're going to go into Kiddom today, because I know a lot of people are like, who's Kiddom and what does it look like? And what do you mean when you say digital and personalized? I am going to show you that. So we'll look at the prescriptive and personalized. And then the last piece, again, I am a huge data fan. I'm probably a data geek. People will say, I love to analyze data. Kiddom has taken that away from me, because now I don't have to do as much analyzation, because it's already telling me exactly where my small groups are, where my needs are. So again, it supports every type of teacher, which is absolutely amazing. So let's start off with those investigations lead to conceptual understanding. We know with these scientific concepts, you guys are going from 2D to 3D. That really means that we're really highlighting those SEPs. That's one of the big pieces that have been added in within TEKS coming up, which is great. But that means we've got to have hands-on components. And so within these curriculums, OpenSci and OpenStax, you're going to see these phenomenon-based lessons that have these storyline approaches, where they're really tailoring to what is going on in the real world that students can relate to, as well as think about in a different way. So you're not only building background knowledge on current topics or concepts, you're also having students drive the thinking through their questioning. Again, if you're looking for a curriculum where kids don't talk, these aren't for you, because these 2 curriculums are about discourse. They are about kids owning the learning. And you're going to see the components where you're going to see the routines are embedded that I'm going to show you here in a minute. The other thing I love that they do as well, when we think about going from leading from the investigation to conceptual understanding, it's collaboration and it's equitable talk. So again, we're not back in the day where we're just raising hands and one or 2 kids answered in the classroom. Yep, when I taught, I probably got in a bad routine. Sometimes it was the same 2. And I'd be like, okay. And they would bail me out every once in a while. No, we want all kids talking around these concepts. But in order to do that, we have to equip teachers, because as much as we say we want to do investigations and we want to get to the conceptual understanding for students, as teachers, they have to own the learning themselves and do that intellectual prep. On the screen here, you're actually seeing the snapshot, the overview that OpenSci provides. As a former teacher in the classroom, this is so helpful for me already to see the overview, the big ideas, the objectives of what I'm going to need to be able to do in that lesson in order to ensure I'm meeting that objective. And that objective is standard, that TEKS aligned, that standard alignment. So again, as much as we talk about, we want to do labs, we want to do simulations, we want to get to the conceptual understanding, we also have to recognize that we have to ensure teachers know where they're going in the lesson, that teachers understand these transitions within the curriculum and within this 2D to 3D framework. And one of my absolute faves that you'll see here, as well is, as I talked about the equitable classroom, the equitable talk, the collaboration, the discussion. One of the things OpenSci does that they've embedded within our middle school curriculum is they've actually added in a driving questions board. The cool part about this, it's all around the anchoring phenomena. And as you can see, it's cluttered with tons of Post-it notes, and it's colorful and it's beautiful. And that's where kids are truly adding in genuine questions around this phenomena. Because what we know about science is just to know the definition of Newton's law and not be able to apply it is students not actually internalizing and conceptualizing the material. You're also seeing within, and the video that's being played are the components within OpenSci and Kiddom, where they're providing background information and knowledge for teachers to be able to support that scope and sequence. They have the unit storyline approach. They also even have, before the lesson even starts, there's assessments, pre-diagnostics that can be given, because guess what? Kids are actually coming to us with a lot of information you might not even know that they already have in their back pocket. The other thing that we also know too, and this is the alignment piece I love that Texas is doing, is some concepts are taught in 4th grade. They don't see them again until 8th grade. I'm going to tell you right now, a 4th grade student, I want to remember it all the way to 8th grade, maybe some of these concepts. So again, really looking at that alignment piece to ensure that we're providing the background knowledge for students to be successful.
Dr. Green, is the driving questions board, would that be an activity that even a brand new teacher fresh out of college or maybe an uncertified teacher would still be able to participate in their classroom?
Great question. That's a great question, because it's what we're dealing with. Yes. And the great part is because the teacher is now not the keeper of knowledge. The teacher is now what we like to call a facilitator. So anybody can facilitate these conversations with students. But as I just showed you those resources with the slide decks and the scope and sequence within inside these curriculums, teachers will have to lean into that so that they have an understanding of these concepts. So even if you're brand new, or maybe you're an interim sub, or you've done a different career and you're doing a career change, you do have to do the intellectual prep, but we're providing you all those materials already organized, so you don't even have to worry about that component of it. Great question, Hannah. All right. So the other piece, and again, this is one of my favorite things. Everybody's like, labs, man, they cost a lot of money. They're okay, to organize them takes forever. To clean up takes forever. There's so many pieces to it. And science teachers want to do labs. I've never met a science teacher that's like, nah, I don't really want to do a lab today. No, the reason why teachers don't do labs a lot of times in classrooms is due to the fact of the money. They have to buy their own materials, or to the time. Organizing labs takes a long time, as well as cleanup. And again, for management component, we already know with students, you better have it organized, because if you're not ready and prepared, it will probably go not well in the beginning, and students might be off task because of it. So sometimes teachers are reluctant. At Kiddom, we've partnered to where your lab materials will already be packaged for every single lab, dropped off at your doorstep. Yes, I said your doorstep, like Amazon. It's almost like Amazon with science labs is kind of how I think about it. And everything will be brought to you and replenished. And you box it back up and it will be shipped right back, and they will house all your materials. Here's the other thing we know. I had really small classrooms. I didn't have storage space. I wish I did. And I know science teachers would say that too. A lot of times we don't even have the storage space to keep materials. This company will do all of that for you. So this is just an example on the screen of all the kits that will be ready, organized with enough materials for every student to engage. So we want to talk about equity. This is equity for every kid to access. They also provide with little like snapshots. So again, for teachers, and these are the open-sided labs, they actually provide them tips and tricks. Because the other thing we know about labs in science is there are tips and tricks to some of the labs. Sometimes it's like, oh, I probably would do it this order. I might do this a little bit differently. We provide that within these kits. So again, it takes it away from the teacher having to be stressed out or feel like they cannot do something due to the fact of money or organization, or just the fear of the unknown of doing a lab and not being sure if they have everything in the moment. We are guaranteeing that. So now I'm going to take you into SLU and Labster. We have partnered with both. SLU is going to be on our open-sided side. So that will be for your middle school students of virtual lab simulations. And then Labster is the high school component. So I'm going to jump into SLU first. So as you can see, SLU is actually real time. So you can go into SLU and you can actually see different telescopes from around the world. You also can create quests inside of here, which again, I think is so awesome. And I know students would love to do this, where I might want to do something with the astronauts. And from here, as easy as I'm just clicking into this to start a quest, now it's taking me through even the quest goals. So again, it supports the teacher, it supports the students. And I want to be able to show you guys within the telescopes. Let's just go to some of these. Will be offline due to weather. So it truly is like in real time. I know, I'm like, wow. And you can schedule a mission to know exactly when they'll actually be seeing certain planets as well. So again, you have access to all of this just from your fingertips all over the world. And again, the exposure that we're being able to provide students is amazing. You can even open the time lapse here and play it right here of this actually being a time lapse in real time. So I cannot say enough about this. And I'm from Michigan originally, and I'm telling you right now, we did not have any of this when I was in science, and I would have loved it because it might have inspired me differently to maybe where I would have wanted to do a career within the scientific field, just because of some of the amazing things I didn't even know because I didn't have the resources for. And then we get into Labster. The thing I love about Labster, and as being a former high school administrator, don't put in front of high school kids something that looks kidsy cutesy, because they're like, they think they're adults and they want to be treated like adults. And the one thing I love about Labster is you have this amazing catalog from a teacher perspective to where teachers can truly go into their lessons and assign anything they want. So if we're in anatomy and physiology, there's all these online labs that you can assign and add. And from here, as I said about the high school students, you are able to actually put on a real lab coat, put on gloves. It's very realistic, as you can see. So all of the images and the things they're able to do are truly realistic to what a student would do in a lab. And again, as we know, the pricing of materials, to be able to take kids and do all these lab simulations is not very practical. And so in order to expose students, this is one of those ways that you can do that. Okay. Hannah, do you have any thoughts on students that you could see would be really enjoying Labster and SLU?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Dr. Green, I'm so glad you mentioned, you not having the opportunity to have a program like this or have materials like this, because I was thinking the same thing. I probably would have done a lot better in my science classes and would have had a higher grade if I would have been,
Hi there. Welcome to Labster. Today you will.
Sorry, that is Labster getting started. And again, it even
kicked off.
monitors progress and everything. I know, I'm like, all right, we're going to stop that. It even monitors progress. And in real time, it scores students. You can add assignments. And I've actually even done it as a student, and it will literally prompt me and support me if for some reason there's a question I respond to and I might get it wrong. It actually provides me background information and knowledge to support me for the understanding. So again, it's more about truly understanding the concept than it is about getting something right or wrong.
Absolutely. I just think about how many opportunities we're providing for students to really take a step back and see if this is something that they could potentially be interested in. I never had an interest in any type of science field, and I honestly feel like it was because my science experience was primarily writing notes and reading something out of a textbook. It was very, plain Jane, very memorize, take the test, keep it moving, write notes, memorize, take a test, keep it moving. We didn't really have any type of hands-on interactives. And so even if it's a virtual opportunity like Labster or like SLU, being able to provide, again, equitable opportunities for all students to be able to have access to that is just super exciting. And it's a field that is growing, especially here in Texas. We need more people to be going into scientific fields. And so what a great opportunity for students to kind of start to click and play around and see if it's something that they're really interested in and something that they're really passionate about.
I love that. I love that. And so our first accessible piece within science that I really want to highlight is going to be the hands-on component, ensuring that they're providing that intellectual prep, that scope and sequence to get students to that conceptual understanding. Kiddom has also paired with OpenStax. I know it's not here on the screen, where we've actually added in more hands-on labs with OpenStax and actually have lab manuals already ready to go and printed. So again, we really understand how imperative it is for students to be able to have those experiences so that they're able to really understand these scientific concepts and really understand mastery of the standards. So let's move on to point 2 of our being accessible with all for our science in Texas, and prescriptive and personalized learning for all. And this is near and dear to my heart. I'm very much about ensuring that every student's needs are being met so that they can engage with the task. So as you see here within our curriculums currently, they offer and provide the look fors and the listen fors. As a former administrator, this is one of the pieces of feedback I used to give my teachers all the time, where I would be asking, what were you looking for? What were you listening for? What was it that you wanted to hear from students as you ask questions? Or what's the follow-up question, depending on what the student said? And sometimes teachers struggled with that. Well, these amazing curriculums are really recognizing we've got to provide more supports for our teachers. So our curriculums are providing those what to look for and listen for, and then questions to follow up with. You also see and then suggested prompts. So they will even provide you inside of the curriculums, inside of OpenScience, it will actually prompt a teacher to provide a scaffold if a student is struggling here. You will also see, again, the scope and sequence of that learning snapshot to ensure that as teachers, they're understanding in order to be prescriptive to students, because they know where the lesson is going. They know where the unit is going. And on here, and I'm going to take you into Kiddom here in just a second, Kiddom also recognizes that you have to be able to personalize also through question types. We know mastery of standards look different. That's what you see on here. We have tons of different question types that could be auto-graded or manually graded in order for the teacher to have the autonomy to make those decisions. And then we've also outlined within OpenStax, which is the high school curriculum, you're going to see here that we have created that scope and sequence. So we have paired with OpenStax with their curriculum to actually outline it for teachers. Another question as an administrator I used to get all the time is pacing. They're like, well, how long should I be on this lesson? Or I would get a lot of times too, how do I know that this lesson is tied to these standards? As you can see here as a visual, we've done that. So again, it helps teachers to really manage their time to spend more time on the right things. And the right things is digging into the material so that they have that intellectual prep happening before they are teaching in front of students. And so again, that vertical alignment Hannah referred to, where you guys are really looking at, and I think this is amazing, every state should be doing it, really looking at where are these concepts being taught, how much, when, and how often, right? And so again, we want to ensure that even through here, you're able to see the alignment of those standards, where they're taught and how long of a lesson it should be. And I always want to highlight, especially from the administrative standpoint in our secondary schools, how imperative it is to really be college and career ready. And again, with both of these curriculums, especially with our OpenStax being developed at the collegiate level, it is really rich content. But again, research tells us that we should be exposing students to on or above grade level materials. And then that way we are personalizing and being prescriptive for those students that need enrichment. This is a great opportunity to really expose students to this type of material they're going to start to see at that collegiate level. I know when I graduated, I was like, I'm not really sure if I was totally prepared for college. I survived, but I know that is the question that always comes up is, were you really prepared, right? And did you feel like the text that you had in high school matched the level of text you're going to see in college? And sometimes there's too much of a gap there. So again, ensuring that we're able to do that. And Kiddom provides the opportunity to, if you need to change the text or you need to change the question type just to engage kids in the core curriculum, you can do that. And then who doesn't love a good routine? Because I surely do. Everybody loves routines and structures. And we know with research that routines establish a sense of predictability in the classroom that supports students' learning. By knowing what to expect, they're better able to engage in the curriculum without being thrown off by unexpected activities, scheduling shifts, because for some students, that can send them into a meltdown, as we know. And we're seeing more emotional outbursts, I would say, in schools than ever before, no matter the grade band. And so OpenSide has developed these routines where they're already embedded inside the lesson and they're highlighted. So as you're going to see when we go inside Kiddom, there's portions where they're going to talk about the investigation routine and students are going to engage in that. The beautiful part about consistency for 6th through 8th, as long as you keep your curriculum, well, you guys are adopting for quite a few years. When you have the consistency of a curriculum, then kids are going to start to remember those routines. So when they go from 6th to 7th grade, they're going to be like, oh, we've done the problematizing routine all last year. I know how this works, or I've utilized the driving questions board. I know I'm going to go put my Post-it note there already because I know how this works. So again, I cannot emphasize enough that these routines here also advance that unit storyline that OpenSciEd has embedded within with these 5 routines and these activities that play specific roles in advancing that storyline and structures to help students achieve those objectives. And again, it's very much discourse-based, heavy discourse-based with students leading that discussion, as well as these hands-on components. All right, before we jump into our last piece of how to be accessible or have accessible science, I'm going to jump right into Kiddom. Because I know everybody's like, all right, let's just see what is Kiddom. All right, so in here, this is my classroom. This is the teacher. For me, Deion Sanders right now, Colorado's not doing too great. I already know, it's okay. But he is the teacher of the moment. And my star student is Michael Jordan. So you're going to see a lot of assignments from Michael. You know, he's always been a go-getter. He's the one that needed to be enriched. He always wanted to work on things that he found to be weaknesses. So I'm going to speak about Michael today. So inside of Kiddom, on the left-hand side, you have classes and you have your curriculum. So truly, you have your curriculum right here. And inside of the curriculum, all the materials that you would get paperback copies of, which we can print, and you can print through Kiddom as well after you make personalizations. All of these items we've organized here. So as a teacher, I can easily go in. Here's my unit 7.1. I've got my unit storyline that I started to refer to here. But the thing I really wanted to talk to you guys today about is going to be the personalizing piece, that prescriptive and personalized. Because again, Hannah, and I kind of want you to tell us a little bit about some of those personalizations that we can make for students in order for them to be able to get engaged in those tasks as I start to bring up the exit ticket to personalize.
Absolutely. And so you're going to be able to see, Dr. Green is going to be able to create a personalized version of this exit ticket. So what is great about the OpenSciEd and OpenStax curriculum on Kiddom is that districts are always, and your teachers you're always going to have access to the original version of the curriculum. So you can make as many personalizations to this exit ticket as needed. So you can have, again, your enrichment personalization exit ticket. You can have one for maybe a lower group. I know most folks on this call know that Texas is one of, if not the most diverse state in the country. We have a lot of students who are bilingual or who are ELL. So if we have specific groups of students that we need to support, you're going to be able to go in and create your own personalized versions of that exit ticket. And so you're going to be able to watch Dr. Green do this by editing any of the text. She can add in specific questions. What I also really love is you can also make sure that adding in specific skills or specific TEKS, state standards, and going into, again, that personalization piece that we talked about earlier. Look at all the opportunities that your students have to show their work. So there's different student tools, there's different manipulatives. So that question that Dr. Green was on had a written response. You can go in and completely change that. So I could go in as a teacher and say, hey, I really want to walk away from multiple choice. Let's put in something else. Maybe I want to have an open-ended question. Maybe I have this group of students that I'm creating this exit ticket for. Maybe they have accommodations in their IEP that is listed that they need all question and answer choices read out loud to them. I can actually record myself as the teacher via video or audio and add that in for any of my students that need that option for this exit ticket. And then the best part is the student can respond the same way. So if it's easier for them, or if it's a specific accommodation that they have, for them to repeat it verbally, which I always felt like really showed me that students were grasping that TEK mastery, if they're able to rattle it off back to myself. Or I could even say, hey, I want you to record a video of yourself in a peer-to-peer situation, answering the question and describing it to your peer, and upload that as proof of, again, TEK mastery. We are able to, again, personalize it and provide umpteen different options compared to your normal just multiple choice, short answer, fill in the blank. We're able to, again, really create and personalize any of the curriculum on the Kiddom platform.
And this is so important. Thank you, Hannah. And this is so important. And as you can see, I've added a question here. It's important because we know all students learn differently and mode of mastery looks different. So allowing us to have different question types that we can create, also allowing teachers to then get that data that we're about to talk about. You've got all of we talk about vertical alignment. You can be able to see all the standards throughout the grade levels, and then teachers can add them here. You also have the ability, and again, this is great for accommodations purposes. You can upload a video or a video. You might be outside and you're doing a lab, or you're doing your hands-on lab in class. You could take a video of it, upload it to an assignment or to a question that kids can refer to. One of the best things you can do with labs is actually enrich kids by not only doing the lab, but having questions that follow up on the lab, even if it's questions around what they would do differently with the lab. What were their hypotheses at the beginning to their findings at the end? Again, you have the flexibility here within science that's imperative, allowing students to really reflect on their learning, and for teachers to be able to have the autonomy to know, I might need to add in a question to enrich. I might go inside this text here because I want to add in a specific saying I want students to really focus in on a certain term or concept. It's also great, as you can see, to add in. I love this because, again, that SPA review concept I've talked about. As a teacher, I used to do SPA reviews all the time because there were standards I would want to review all the time throughout the course of the year, because guess what? They wouldn't see their test till the end of the semester or till the end of a school year. So this is a great way, as you start to collect that data, to add in question types that align to these standards. Awesome. So now that we've talked about being personalized and prescriptive through our curriculums that offer that as well, now we're really going to jump into our data as our third piece and our last piece to make accessible science instruction and curriculum. So Within the curriculums, again, you want to find a curriculum that is offering engagement protocols, offering those scaffolds, enrichment, and really supporting our teachers to attend to all types of students. So inside of OpenStax and OpenScience, you're going to see scaffolds that are embedded. Inside of OpenScience, they called it attending to equity. It truly prompts the teacher of how to support students that might be struggling or might need some more background information to be able to engage in the task. You'll see a picture here of, actually I pulled it right out from OpenScience, and this is again one of my favorite pieces, suggested prompts. So if a student is struggling to engage, instead of the teacher just giving the answer, those days are gone with. We can now ask questions to students to help facilitate their thinking. So again, a kid may not be able to engage right away, but if we offer this just-in-time scaffold, a suggested prompt, we're now able to provide another opportunity for the student to engage in the task in a different way, as well as those sample responses I referred to are critical. And as a former administrator at both an elementary and high school, I can honestly tell you this is a piece that I love that they have recognized to really support and strengthen teachers' understanding of what they're looking for, and keep it about your TEKS and keep it about those objectives, keeping it student-centered on the mastery. Here's an example. Again, I'm going to show you. I cannot say enough about data. Data truly drives instruction, and we need to know where kids are at. And one of the best questions as an administrator you can ask is when you do feedback or you do an observation and you're like, hey, tell me about this group of students that I observed in the room. Well, we've got to equip teachers to be able to have those conversations. Here's a way to do that. Within the curriculum itself, within OpenScience, they're going to have OpenStax, they're going to have links to learning. I love the visual connections. Again, so many of the learners, for myself even in particular, I do better visually. I like to see a representation of it in order to answer a question about it. OpenStax recognizes that. Kiddom then takes those questions, and after they've been answered, we've now developed it to where a teacher can easily have a quick data snap. So now you already have your data here, where I see that right now, my mastery groups, I've got 5 kids that are approaching. I don't have any kids that are developing so far in my class. This is great for me as a teacher or an administrator to start having questions around how are we then supporting those higher level thinkers, because you've got 3 in mastery or 2 in mastery and 3 exceeds. So again, this data is standards based. It's aligned to your TEKS because it is your standards, to ensure that we are really meeting the objectives and the mastery of those standards. And then when we think about OpenStax, what is OpenScience? What does OpenScience provide? And that's our middle school. They provide assessments such as student questioning and those exit tickets. I'm a huge exit ticket fan. I think every curriculum should have exit tickets. I also love those warm-ups, right? Quick and easy. It could be 1 or 2 questions that you could provide. But again, that 1 or 2 questions that you provide that are aligned to standards, you get this data right away. This is great for, again, this is also great for parent-teacher conferences, student-led conferences, that ownership, to really know where our kids at rather than just saying, oh, you're at 80%. What does 80% mean in a classroom? And I'm going to be honest, as a teacher, I used to say that to my parents. I'm like, oh yeah, they're at a 80%, and I might be able to give them some more information, but I wasn't equipped at all times to be able to speak fully to what the student could do based on skills and concepts. So now that I've talked enough about that, because I always like to go into Kiddom because it's so much better to see it in Kiddom than me just blurting about what Kiddom is. So inside of Kiddom, where we showed you where all your curriculum is housed, inside of the classrooms is where you're going to be able to see your reports. So that data that I was just referring to. As you assign assignments to students, they'll all live here. I can actually go into an assignment, such as this cool down, for example, and I'm now able to see a breakdown of my class of how we just did. And it's literally a 4-question assignment. And all I had to do was go ahead, personalize, and then just assign it to students. And right here, I now have at my fingertips, these are auto-graded questions, save me a ton of time. And I can also filter it by standards. I had 4 questions. Guess what? I only assessed on 1 standard. So again, this will really support teachers too in recognizing what standards are we assessing on and how many questions are we asking. Just to ask 10 questions on 1 standard is probably not efficient with our time, right? Because if they don't get it in 3 questions, I guarantee you they're not going to get it in 10. So really being mindful about what questions are we asking and was it telling us about the mastery of standards. So from here as a teacher, I would look at this, I would go, okay, because this is my small group. This is one of my groups that actually has a caseload where an ex-ed teacher is rostered to my class. And so this exceptional education group here has accommodations of read aloud. Well, I'm looking at it going, okay, Hannah, she's at 92% with this standard. Great, check. I'm looking at Thaddeus and Lakeisha. I'm noticing that I've got quite the variance with this one standard with 3 students. And so that for me as a teacher is where I would go to my ex ed teacher and I would have conversations around how can we really support Lakeisha? Because it looks like we need to do some more background knowledge with her because she's sitting at 42% with the standard. Whereas Thaddeus might need a different type of support. That could be something me in the homeroom, I could provide for him. I could pull a small group. I've probably got other kids who are also struggling with this standard. And so I'm actually going to pull a small group here. So again, just in 2 seconds, I just gave you a whole reasoning of how I would utilize this data in my classroom.
What I love about this part too, Dr. Green, is like, this is the mind-blowing part to me of the accessible data that's available on Kiddom. So again, going back to what I said earlier of like, if I would have had this at my fingertips instead of saying, because I did the same thing, I was equally as guilty of like, yes, your child is at a 85% and they're doing great. And here's a few different pieces of work that they've done. And I can, like you said, kind of explain it a little bit. But to really go in depth and to really be able to provide this data coaching and explain it not only to families, but then also be able to explain it to my administrators, be able to explain it to the other teachers that this student that I have in my class is like how they're doing in my class. I mean, the data coaching opportunity is just another piece that we really need to provide teachers support with. I feel like a lot of times they come in, and I would say the first 2-3 years that I was teaching, I was kind of in survival mode. I was just trying to not sink. I was trying to swim. So be able to have something like this at your fingertips and to really know where your students is groundbreaking. And so I'm just super excited to get this in front of teachers. I really honestly feel like it's going to make a huge difference.
Oh, definitely. And real quick, I know we're running out of time and I want to get to Q&A to allow for people that might have questions. I also want to show you my big brother style. You can even zoom in inside of what Thaddeus did, and I can go question by question to exactly see what are the areas that he might be struggling with. So again, it's the zoom in mode to where, again, you have so much rich information now at your fingertips that's so easily digestible as a teacher, as an administrator, to make those best decisions for students and to have those conversations, and for students to take ownership for their learning and to have genuine conversations with families about how students are doing with mastery of standards.
I love
the other
that.
piece I'm going to show, and the last piece, when we think about that data to support our diverse learners, is going to be around a report. So you saw kind of a picture of this snapshot here. This is in real time, my classroom. And again, it's just easy for me to see where are my students at, how many, and what do I need to do with those students. I'm going to dig in a little deeper. Down below here, these are all the standards that I have assessed my students on. It could have been an assignment or an assessment. And from here, we also know data trends. I know when I would look at data, it was like, oh, we got the question right for the standard on question 1, same standard on question 5. My class missed it horribly. Why? Right? And we've got to go back to this question type. So inside of Kiddom, you can actually dive into the standards themselves to really see who took the assessment. And then from there, Hannah did great on it. I'm going to look at Lakeisha. Let me see how many times she's taken it. Well, she's only seen the standard twice. So again, I might go into the question types to really see why is she doing well with one question, but she's not doing well with the other, but it's the same standard. So again, I can't say enough about how this informs teachers to ensure that we're providing that high quality instruction to students. All right, so I always love to close with, I hate when you start with something, but then you don't close with it. So we're going to close with it. So today, I really hope you walked away with really understanding. We have these 2 amazing curriculums, OpenSci, OpenStax, 2 very different type of curriculums, but how Kiddom enhances that. And we want to ensure that our science instruction is accessible for all. You do that through leading with the investigations for conceptual understanding, Labster, SLU, the hands-on labs. Then you also do that with the prescriptive and personalized learning. We need to ensure that we're equipping teachers with scope and sequences, the overview, the learning snapshot, but then also for teachers to be able to, in real time, be able to provide those just-in-time scaffolds, attending to equity, the suggested prompts. And then the very last piece is going to be that data to differentiate learning. And I love to say that because truly, as we just went through that data, I just segregated it so quickly because it's done for me. Now I can analyze it in my classroom to say, now I'm going to make these decisions to really support all students to be successful. And again, own their learning. And the last piece, this is one of my favorite. I think everybody knows Marzano. He is probably one of the most famous for around curriculum. And I love this quote because it's really about the words that stand out to me about a guaranteed and viable curriculum is going to be equitable, as we talked about the equity and access piece, rigorous, that we're enriching, we're providing honor above grade level text for students at all times, staying in that core curriculum, and we're standards based. That is key. You need to be TEKS aligned with your curriculums because that's what kids are going to be assessed on. That's your standards, and that's what we're looking for with mastery, and that we want it across in all grade levels, all subject areas. So again, ensuring that you guys are equipped to purchase the curriculum that is going to be right for your district and that meets the needs of your students. But again, ensuring that you can still personalize and be able to support all types of learners with their accommodations or their needs in the classroom. All right, I'm gonna stop there and pop it over if there is any questions that we can answer.
Yeah. Thank you both so much. Actually, it sort of tails off what you just mentioned. Can you talk a little bit about the standards alignment to Texas and the TEKS with both curriculums?
Perfect. Yeah. So interestingly enough, NGSS, probably everybody's heard about Next Generation Science Standards. That's really common in the United States right now. And so a lot of our science curriculums have started with NGSS. But what we knew at Kiddom was that Texas has their TEKS standards, right? Which again is not NGSS. And so what we have done, we've paired with OpenSite and OpenStax to meet the needs of your TEKS standards to where we are 100% alignment with the standards in the state of Texas. So you can be rest assured that both curriculums will be offering the TEKS alignment 100% within your state.
Great, thank you. Can you speak to Spanish in the program?
That is another great question. And we also know Hannah has informed me, and again, across the country, we're seeing an increase of students of English as a second language. And so we want to ensure, again, that equity piece. So Kiddom actually has developed Spanish versions for both curriculums. So rest assured, again, you do not have to worry about, do you guys have Spanish versions available? We will have Spanish versions available. The other beautiful part too is with that personalized piece, you can also personalize utilizing Google Translate. If you're not a Google area and you use Microsoft, same thing. And once you translate the text or the question, they have over 100 different languages available as well. Once you personalize it and save it, you can shoot it out to that group of students or for that individual student so that's in their native language if you would like for that as well. So again, we just want to ensure that all students' needs are being met in that way, regardless of the language that is needed.
Thank you. And the last question, we often know that when one adopts a curriculum, a new one, it feels like you have a lot of things to do. And I always say focus on one thing and then add another. What is something that a teacher who is adopting the curriculum could do easily to customize? Is there one thing they could focus on and then build off that? Or is there something you really enjoy? So it doesn't feel overwhelming, like their plate is so full that they don't want to customize.
Great question. That's a great, thank you, Megan. That is a good question. I would definitely say the thing that I always lean in on is assessments first, right? Because we do find sometimes it's a lot, right? You've got a curriculum and you're thinking about where do I start? And so I always lean into the assessments that are provided inside of our curriculum, start assigning those, and let's start collecting that data. Because then from there, we can have conversations as teams of teachers around the data that we're collecting in real time. And again, because both curriculums provide these opportunities for these check-ins, for these exit tickets, formative and summative assessments, that's where a lot of times I say, hey, let's start here. And then teachers will start to see, oh, this was really easy to assign to students. I got this data so fast. I'm now able to adjust and make adjustments in real time with my students. So I would probably say that would be the best starting place of getting into the curriculum and utilizing that personalization component. I also recommend if you guys have exceptional education teachers, you can co-roster them inside of Kiddom. So like I was saying, that was a caseload of students. That teacher could go in and make those accommodations and personalizations themselves. So then the homeroom or the gen ed teacher, they don't have to always worry about that. And then that way, those accommodations are still being met, because I know how challenging that is always. A lot of times it's a read aloud, a pull out small group. So we can do that by actually recording directions and the whole test, audio or video recorded, or providing videos or images as well. So great question.
Thank you so much. We are at time, so if you don't mind going to the slide with a little bit more information. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more, we have the QR code up here. In 24 hours after the webinar ends, you'll receive this recording. You'll also receive a certificate of attendance, so look out for that. If for some reason you do not receive it, please check your spam box. It will come from Zoom. I'd like to thank both Whitney and Hannah for all their insights, and especially everyone for attending. I really appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit more about making science accessible for all students. Thank you.
Have a great day.